We are messing everything up by burning fossil fuels, but we've got a plan B. We are going to electrify everything and run it all on renewables until nuclear fusion finally comes and saves us. Beyond all the complexities of this plan, there's a hidden threat that could end it before it even takes off. This threat is real and inevitable, and if we have paid no attention to it so far, it's because we imagine it lying far off on the horizon. But this threat is also an opportunity to face deeper questions we still haven't resolved. How do we value all the things the planet gives us? How should we manage that wealth? What do we owe to future generations? And finally, when will we start acting like an adult species? There's a lot to clear up, so let's get into it. Humans are not the only animals capable of using technology, but we are the ones who have pushed it the farther. And in that development, we can't help but use more and more materials. This simultaneous arrival of digital tech and renewable energy has blown up our demand for materials. Many of them are metals with exotic names that barely got used to decades ago. For instance, the device you're watching this video on almost certainly contains neodymium, praseodymium, gadolinium, dysprosium, terbium, lanthanum, tantalum, indium, and arsenic, among many others. Almost all of these elements can also be found in electric vehicles. Dysprosium and neodymium are needed in wind turbines, and cadmium, gallium, germanium, indium, tellurium, and molybdenum can be found in solar panels. That leaves us with a pretty clear picture. The technologies we're planning to build our future societies on are heavily dependent on a huge range of materials. And these materials aren't renewable, so sooner or later they're bound to become scarce. That's the problem, or at least its most visible part, because behind the basic idea of resource scarcity, there's a deeper layer to the issue. And to get closer to it, we need to understand what we're really doing with minerals. Before I started working on this video, my own view of minerals was the same as most people's. I thought we extract them from mines, we process and refine them, and we use them to make products that we eventually consume. If we are lucky enough, we use them for a long time. And if we are even luckier, maybe we can recycle some of them before they end up in a landfill. I used to worry more about landfills overflowing than about running out of minerals because, after all, everything around us is made of minerals. This view isn't entirely wrong, but it's incomplete, because it takes for granted the hardest part of the process. And of course we take it for granted, because we have to pay nothing for it. We get it for free. The only reason humans can extract minerals is because they are concentrated in veins. And veins are something really exceptional. Nearly every chemical element exists in the Earth's crust, but in widely different amounts. 8 of them are extremely abundant, and the rest are scattered in very low concentrations. In that realm of dispersion, extracting them seems almost impossible. Luckily for us, over millions of years, geological processes have concentrated these elements into mineral veins. Each one of these veins is like a natural bonus, a gift from the earth to be used. The tragedy, or maybe the nonsense, is that in a very short time, we throw these resources back into the realm of dispersion. Of course, we don't do this on purpose. It just happens as a side effect of making and consuming technology. Every year, tons of pure elements get dispersed into grams, milligrams, or even nanograms, scattered across billions of devices worldwide. We are wasting our natural bonus at a dramatic pace, and we have no one to blame. We could blame capitalism or consumer culture, but that would be like throwing stones into the fog. This waste is more likely the consequence of a broken promise, a mechanism we assume would protect us, and this time it hasn't. We live in a market economy, which means the market is supposed to manage resources. And it does so through its invisible hand, prices, signals that coordinate supply and demand. That invisible hand, we are told, is the most efficient way to manage our resources. This idea is supported by debt and living economists, the World Bank and the IMF. Of course, not everyone agrees on that, but we'll leave that debate aside. We'll just point out that when it comes to minerals, that invisible hand isn't working properly. To explain this idea, we'll start with a basic fact. The exponential demand for mineral resources will eventually crash with the planet's limited supply. And yet, even though every year brings us closer to that collision point, there's no sign of it in the mineral market. That's because the market doesn't care about the actual scarcity of a resource. It only cares about its availability at a given moment. What really matters isn't how much is left underground, but how much is available under the sun to be bought and sold. And yes, future expectations influence prices too, but usually only in the short term. The hand of the market is blind to long-term limits and therefore is incapable of foreseeing the resource problem or anticipating it. This conclusion deeply worried Alicia Valero and her father Antonio Valero. Alicia and Antonio are part of a group of engineers worried about our society's waste of resources, and that concern led them to a strange idea. Since we can't trust prices, why don't we assign resources an objective value? A value free from market dynamics, one that reflects the real scarcity. And why not? A value that takes into account the natural bonus hidden inside every mineral. Such a value could only come from the harsh lens of thermodynamics. Thermodynamics has a reputation for being dry and complicated, but behind its equations we can find some pretty understandable principles. While the first law of thermodynamics tells us that energy can only be transformed, the second reminds us that not all energy is usable. When we heat up a pot of water, only part of the butane's energy goes into the pot, while the rest is lost into the air. This principle applies everywhere, all the time, no matter what we are doing. And it implies something pretty brutal. Any human creation comes with an even greater distraction. That's not a pleasant idea. We don't like it, so we just ignore it. We prefer to focus only on the creation side, on creating, producing, and consuming. Our economy only measures that side of the balance sheet, and that's why we talk about GDP, productivity, assets, and so on. There's no accounting of distraction, and we really need one, because if we run out of useful energy to destroy, we won't be able to create anything at all. But the destructive side always goes unnoticed, or almost always. Alicia and Antonio Valero focused on that distraction and realized it could actually be useful. When we extract and refine minerals, we have to burn diesel and consume electricity, use fresh water and chemical reagents. That destruction of useful energy can be measured and turned into a cost. Instead of dollars or euros per ton, this cost is measured in units of energy per ton. But still, that cost is incomplete, because it ignores the value the mineral already had before we even touched it, the natural bonus of being concentrated in a vein. So Alicia and Antonio asked themselves, how much would it cost to restore a mine from nothing? To answer that question, they had to define that nothing, and in doing so, they came up with their own personal apocalypse. As an apocalyptic scenario, Thanatia is pretty unique. It's not made of Mad Max-style deserts, and it's not full of radiation or toxic gases. Thanatia is a version of Earth that is mineral dead. All mines have been exhausted, all elements have been dispersed, all fossil fuels have been extracted and burned. Our civilization, or any modern civilization, could not survive in a world like that. But Thanatia is not a futuristic prediction. Rather, it's a limit scenario, a model of the nothing we get closer to every time we deplete a mine. And precisely because of that, we can use Thanatia as a reference point and work backwards. How much would it cost us to create a mine from Thanatia? How much useful energy would we have to destroy? That entire cost, which is usually huge, is the natural bonus a mine represents. It's the cost nature has already saved us by concentrating those minerals, and so it's part of the true value. That avoided cost, together with the cost of extraction and refining, makes up the thermodynamic cost of a mineral. That's the metric Alicia and Antonio Valero were looking for, and once they had it, they started to use it. Through the lens of this new thermodynamic cost, Alicia and Antonio's team carried out a ton of analysis, mainly to try to anticipate potential risk scenarios. And these forecasts warn us of supply problems for different elements in the coming decades. And they're not alone. The International Energy Agency foresees gaps between supply and demand for critical elements in less than 20 years. But these predictions have a weak point. Their starting data is really poor. As Alicia Valero explained a few years ago, the wave of research on the limits to growth that bloomed in the 70s collapsed in the 80s with the rise of neoliberal governments. And in that process, agencies like the USGS suffered budget restrictions, and all the information about mineral resources and reserves started to decline. And we really need that information back in order to know more precisely how deep the mud goes. Because here's the danger. All the problems we have seen so far are exponential problems. And when dealing with exponential problems, once the mud reaches your ankles, it's already too late to react. So while we struggle with uncertainty, it would seem wise to start adopting solutions. Something that really strikes me is that most of the measures that could help with this problem would actually improve society anyway, whether resources are scarce or not. So it doesn't make much sense to wait any longer. This isn't about ethics or environmentalism anymore, but of raw, plain survival. We need to stop behaving like drunk teenagers at a party and assume the reality that someone else will have to clean our mess. We need to abandon the fantasy that the world is ours to use however we like. It's time to act like an adult species and take responsibility for every consequence of our actions.